I think, from the students. So it's very easy for us to, as a student to approach this exam and say it's one of the baby ones, and I'll focus on the ones that are more heavily, from a content point of view, have more weight. And then this one gets sort of forgotten about until the last week or two before the exam, and then you rush, and then you realize that you unfortunately didn't pass, and you wonder why. And it really does deserve a bit of respect. I'll definitely, and I tell the students that I counsel for this exam as well, it's definitely an exam if you're going to repeat. Unfortunately, it is the one that's I think most often repeated for that reason, but it's also one that's maybe a little bit easier to stomach, to repeat it. But let's hope that none of you have to repeat it. That's why you're all here. We want to make sure that we get as high a success rate as possible. And so what I want to do, I've got some slides. I want to take you through a little bit of a journey to show you some hints and tips. I know you've done an assignment recently, and we'll go through the 2 questions of that assignment. But really just to give you some, maybe some indication as to how I, as a technical marker, mark your papers, and I'm looking to find marks, because I really am. I want you to pass. I really try to find as many marks as I can, but often students miss the mark with using sort of common mistakes, and we'll go through those. So yeah, having said that, I just want to know, before we jump into the presentation, how many of you, is this your first time writing in 211 with all communications? Okay, if you could just put your hand up, so if there's a little hand icon. Okay, so I see 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I'm guessing there's only about 3 or 4 of you that it's for the first time. So I think then a lot of what I've said might resonate, to sort of say, well, yes, we've done this exam before. It's not maybe as easy as we thought, or there's something I'm missing. And so hopefully we'll answer that. I am totally fine. We can leave questions at the end, but I'm also fine for you to interrupt me. You can try put up your hand, or you can comment, or you can just say, Jared, can I ask you a question? And that's great. So let's make this a bit more interactive. So I'm totally fine with that as well. Okay, so having said that, let's share some slides. And we go to presentation. Okay, so hopefully that's presenting now. And yeah, I'll switch that off. Okay, so yeah, as I say, you've got this assignment that I think majority of you did the assignment. I would encourage you to do it if you didn't. And I've seen some of the feedback that Billy shared with me for when you wrote this, and I think the results were a bit varied. I'd say some of you found it. You got your exemption for this this assignment or this exam, because this was taken from an exam. It was actually the 2017 October exam, if I recall. And it is an exam that I marked back then when the students wrote it. And I liked it from a variation point of view, and you'll see what I mean by that. But it shows you the level that you can expect going forward, for your exam. So it really is, yeah, something that you can expect, something along those lines. This is what I want to cover today. So I've got the exam plan, as I call it, and it's just some, as I say, some tips on how I suggest you tackle an exam. And I do suggest you have a plan to tackle the exam. So you may very well sort of see what I have to say and say that's fine, but you're going to do your own plan, and I would say that's okay. You maybe take what you can use from what I'm saying today, but the goal is that you have a plan. I don't want you to go into the exam with no plan whatsoever. So I don't want you to just say, I'm going to wing it, or I'll see how it goes. It really, you do need to tackle this exam in a specific way, and I'll show you how. Then we'll go to the question. And we'll look at question 1 and 2, as I say, of that assignment, and go through the solution. So And yeah, and hopefully, well, I'm sure a lot of you have seen the solution, maybe not, but we'll go through that. And then just what the common mistakes are particular to this question, the question one we'll go through first, and then just, as I say, I've got some time for your questions at the end, but feel free to stop me at any time, and then we'll just monitor as the time goes. If we feel that it's maybe dragging on too much, and we can maybe just leave them to the end. But I really don't mind you interrupting me, and let's see how it goes. Okay, so the exam plan. Let's jump into it. What is the exam plan? And I would say first off, don't rush. Don't jump into it. Don't be worried that everyone around you is now suddenly you've got your 15-minute reading time. And I suppose virtually it's a little bit different. You don't have that looking around you and seeing what other students are doing. But don't rush into the exam. Try keep a level head as much as possible. I do know exams are stressful, and we see it as a marker. You see that exam stress come through. And what I want you to do is try keep as calm as possible. And by having a plan, it will make you calmer. I can promise you that. So that's why having a plan is so important, and practicing that plan, because you will be able to then go through the motions, as it were, as you tackle this exam. But what I want you to do is to read through the exam, I would say 3 times. Some students can maybe do it twice, but definitely not just once. Don't start writing after the first time reading. Read through it, I'd say 3 times, just so that you can assimilate what it is that the question is asking you. And that's where the sort of second column comes in, is to understand the situation. What is the nature of the problem? What are they asking me? Are they, yes, you can, are they asking me to do a presentation, or are they asking me to do a formal letter? Am I talking to financially astute audience, or am I talking to a classroom of school children, and I have to then tone or change my tone appropriately? And that's what I'm saying. Who is the audience? What are they asking? And what students don't realize is that, or what I find when I counsel students is that with this exam, you've got a whole bunch of words. It's 2 or 3 pages of words for one question. Whereas what we're used to from an actuarial exam point of view is where it says question 1.1 and it says list this, question 2.2, calculate that. And so what happens is, now suddenly we have to find the questions so that they're not so easily found. The questions aren't obvious where they are. And that's where I come to this third column here, is to say your goal when you read through this exam the 3 times that you're going to do, or however many it is at the beginning, is to identify 3 categories of information. And I say that because every sentence in that exam paper, and I'll show you what I mean when we go through it, but this is just my suggested exam plan to how to tackle the exam. You can categorize every sentence into 3 different buckets. The buckets are either instructions, or there are facts, or there are context. And you can call them what you want, but the most important category is that instructions category. And I'll, as I say, bear with me, I'll show you what I mean. But every sentence you can categorize into these 3 buckets. The instructions are the questions. And I think students often miss the fact that a question 1, for example, is not one question. There are anywhere between, it could be as little as 3, but it can be as many as 12 different questions or instructions hidden, and I use hidden in inverted commas, but hidden within those words on that page. And your goal is to find those questions, those instructions, because once you've got that then forms the basis for your entire answer. If you know that if I listed those 12 as, question 1, question 2, question 3, all the way down to 12, I can tell you now it would be a lot more easily, it would be more easy to pass this exam, because you would be tackling each of those elements. So what the examiners have done is it's just made it a little bit more difficult, in that those 12, they've scattered in amongst those words, and you have to find those 12. And the reason why you want to find those 12 is because my marking sheet on the other end has those 12 areas, and there are a whole bunch of marks allocated to those 12 instructions. And if you miss 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them, it makes it very difficult to pass. And especially if there's only 3 instructions, then if you miss one, I can tell you now there's no ways you can pass from a technical point of view. You can't get enough marks. But if you tackle all of the instructions, you really do maximize your chances of passing. That brings me to the facts, the second category. The facts part are the I sometimes call it the meat, but it's the content that you need to answer the instructions. And the examiners always give you what you need to answer the instructions. You may have to calculate something, you may have to adapt the information that they've given you, but they give you the tools needed, or you're at that part of your journey, your exam journey, where you should sufficiently know how to construct something that they've given you, whether it be loan repayments for a house, for example, or as we'll see, you find the maximum profits of something. So it'll be fairly easy calculations, but they give you all the tools that you need. The reason why I emphasize that is that don't think that you have to go off on a tangent on something that is not tied in to the instructions. So that's why the instructions are so important. You answer the instructions and the instructions only. Don't add to them, and don't add to them where you don't see part of the facts. So I'll go through it, what I mean by that. The third category is the least, not the least important, but probably the one that's the least from a content point of view. It's what I call the context or the background. It's the one that will guide you to have the right tone, to speak to the right audience, to construct the right medium. So you do a letter versus a PowerPoint, for example, and that just guides you. It's background information that you need to use, but you don't necessarily write it down in your answer. And we'll go through what that means. Okay, so as I say, your exam plan is to identify these three buckets of information, but the instructions are the ones that are the key. So yeah, this is sort of what I've been speaking to, is that your goal number one, find the instructions. That's your only goal at the beginning of the exam. Find the instructions of that question, because if you don't do that, and I can tell you, because this is how I approached the exam. I wrote this exam twice. I'm proud to say, actually, because it taught me something. But the first time I wrote it, and it was because I didn't get my exemption through the university, so I had to write it outside of the university. But the first time I wrote it at university, I didn't have an exam plan like this. So what I did was I read through the question, I read through it again, and then I started writing. And by doing that, you're kind of hoping that you've picked up, that your brain has now picked up what the questions are, and you're hoping that you're tackling the right areas. And I'm wondering if this is resonating with some of you, to sort of say, oh, you just, at the end of it, you're actually not sure if you've tackled all the right areas that the question's asking you. But if you now rethink it and approach it differently, to say, I know that in this question one, there are more than one question. There is a bunch of areas, typically about 5 to 7, I'd say, but as I say, it could be as many as 12. And find those mini questions or those subsections, answer them. That will then form the skeleton of your answer, because then you can reorder those instructions to make sense from a flow point of view, from a how to answer to the audience point of view, to really make the communication piece speak well. That will then maximize your chances. I can promise you that there are more than enough marks available for you to pass if you do that. You're using then the facts to answer these instructions. There's lots of marks available. Don't just copy paste. So often it can be tricky in certain questions where it very much is that you have to use the words given to you, but then make them your own without losing the essence of the question. So we really don't like, and I know Billy will agree with me here, we don't like it when you just copy paste data, dump data from the exam, and unfortunately it's a lot more easily now to do now that everything's electronic. Make it your own. It's really something that you want to bring meaning to the words on the page, and that sort of interpret where you can from that, and that then shows the higher level thinking. But I say high level thinking, I'll use it with caution. As I say, I want you to use what's given to you, so I don't want you to go off on a tangent. That's not what I mean by higher level thinking. Higher level thinking, and you'll see later how I mention it, to always take a step back and ask yourself, am I answering the question? Is my tone appropriate? Is the slide, for example, that I've done, was it what I meant to do? because it's very easy to not see the wood for the trees, as we say, and you really just dive head in, and at the end of it, it actually doesn't say what you meant to say, or actually doesn't answer the question. So it's always important to have that high level thing, but also just that take a step back and keep a level head rather. Clearly, I haven't had enough coffee today. And the third one is the context, as I say, is use these to guide your style and your tone, shows your audience, and just to avoid pitfalls and rabbit holes. And what I mean by that is that we don't want, you might know something about a subject and you might want to then add to it whatever you feel is necessary to bolster your answer. Let's say it's a valuation question and you work in valuations. It's very easy for you to then want to show your knowledge and add a lot to it, but try avoid that. Try stick to the question, the context of the question, stick to what's asked. But also there might be, it's not often, but there might be red herrings, as we call it. So there might be something in the data that actually is there to just throw you off a little bit. It doesn't happen often, so I wouldn't bet on it and don't worry about it. But just again, keeping that level head, you'd be able to see those, I guess. So yeah, again, the bottom line, have a plan and do what works for you, but practice that plan. It's so incredibly important. You can't take what I'm telling you here and then just go, cool, I'm sorted for the exam in, as Billy said, there's 4 Saturdays left. You can't do that, because you wouldn't have practiced it, so it'll all be new, and it's you'll run out of time as well. So you really do have to practice. I want you to get to the point where you can really write that exam, and to you it's just another past paper, because you've practiced this example and you know exactly what you're doing. And when you've got that, it keeps you calm because you're going through the motions and you know what you're doing, and then time is less of a factor as well. Okay, so I've been talking a lot about it from a theoretical point of view, but let's actually see what do I mean, and we can jump into the question, unless anyone's got a question at this point. Let me just maybe take a pause. If anyone's got a question as to what I've said before we jump into your assignment.
No questions in the chat, Jared. Okay. Not yet.
Okay, great. So I'll press on. So question 1, and I'm only starting with question 1 because it's question 1. You can, on that point, you can do your exam in whichever order you feel you'd prefer, but you'll note that most exams, not all of them, but most of them are 50-50 in terms of there's 2 questions and they're both worth 50 marks. So you should aim to spend almost, not exactly, but almost an equal amount of time on each. Now, most exams, and this one was no exception, one question is more tricky than the other. And so I wouldn't mind you spending maybe 60-40 split in terms of your time, but this is, again, it's individual. So, but if you spend 60% of your time on the more difficult one, that I think is okay. I wouldn't go more than that. And you need to be ruthless with yourself in terms of your time, because a lot of the time you've got the majority of the marks, you can move on. The problem we see it time and time again is that you have, let's say question 1 is answered brilliantly and it's an exemption, definitely a pass. Question 2 is an absolute fail because you've only got 6 out of your 11 slides, for example. And there's no ways you can pass them. You can have the best question 1. You have to pass both. It's very rare that you can pass the exam if you didn't. You might be a borderline pass on the one, but a really exceptional pass on the other, and that can maybe get you through. But just don't bank on that. So manage your time is what I'm saying. And give each question its due respect. So having said that, but you tackle whichever question you want first, but we're going through question 1 first. So the question was really about a client that was concerned about a wellness program, if you recall, and the impact that wellness program had, or the results of the wellness program had on their ability to claim. So they were really worried that I've been assessed from this wellness program, and now the insurer is going to use those underwriting results to deny me my claim, should I claim. And it was really, what was interesting about this is that it was quite a lot of documents in the sense that there was an email from a colleague to you, there was a historical email from you to the client, and the colleague was a broker, but yeah, I'll call them a colleague. And They also gave you a table of data of claim statistics, so that was also useful. But there were two concerns really that this client had, and it was around the wellness program implications, as I mentioned. But there was also the secondary concern, and it was about their cover. And I said cover concentration here, but it was about the fact that they were worried that they've got high amounts of cover, all with one insurer, and they're worried that the insurer won't be able to pay. So not only are they going to use the wellness results to possibly deny me my claim because the wellness shows that I'm unhealthy, but they were worried that they had too much cover with one insurer and the insurer wouldn't be able to pay. So this is a prime example, and I'll show you on the next page when we go through it. But it's a prime example to show that there's more than one question here. There's the main concern was this wellness program and its implications, but there was the secondary concern about this cover concentration. You had to tackle both, and if you didn't, you would only get half the marks. So it really is important to cover all your bases, all the instructions, as I say, and I'll show you what I mean. It was an official letter to draft to ease this concern, and it was between 575 and 625 words. The words aren't just made up. They aimed at the level or the range that will allow you, if you answered all of the instructions, you'll find yourself in that range. I always tell students to aim for the top side of that range. So I would aim for the 625, but don't go over. It's easy marks that you're then throwing away if you go over or under your word count. If you go under your word count, you've got a bigger problem, because that means that you actually haven't tackled all the instructions that were out there. And so you're missing something. So if you find all the instructions and you answer all the instructions and you do it in a succinct, hit the nail on the head way without waffling or repeating yourself, you'll find that you'll magically arrive within this range. You should. And that's the goal, right? That's why they are set where they are set. Okay, so this was the first page of the question. I've just pasted a graphic of it there. And this was the second and third pages. So it was 3 pages, as you see. And don't worry that I'm just pasting it. I want to show you what I mean with this categorizing the different bits of information by doing this. So this is really just all the information that we've got here. Sorry, this is first and second page, and this is the third page. Now you can see, so I'm just flicking back between this is the exam, the question 1. First 2 pages and third page. If I do my technique of categorizing every bit of information, suddenly your exam looks like this. Now, don't do this. I don't want you sitting with your highlighters in your exam, because this is going to take you, half an hour, and that you've wasted your time. What I've done here is I've categorized. Red is the instructions. So these are my 3 categories of information. Red, the instructions. My orange or yellow is the facts or the meat that I'm going to use to answer my instructions. And the green is the context. So let's just flick to the last one. You'll see there's one more instruction at the bottom there, or a couple instructions at the bottom, and some more meat in terms of this claim stat. Now, I've done this broadly. You may categorize it slightly different. Of the fact that I've highlighted this sentence, he's still not satisfied with the information he's received from you. This is probably more a context thing. Maybe it's not an instruction, but the second part of this, he requires confirmation as the underwriting process. So that's probably more and what I'm showing you here is every single sentence, every bit of information here can be categorized. And why I'm saying that, and I keep saying it, is that students will often miss something, and it's typically at the end here. So if I go to this page here, there'll typically be a bullet point here at the end, or the middle bullet point. Let's say this one, it's the ombudsman one. You can't really see it, but it's the one that said that none of the unpaid claims were reported to the ombudsman. Do you know how many students don't use that bit of information? And I can tell you now it's worth a mark or 2 on my side. So I have a spreadsheet that says give 2 marks for mentioning the fact that your unpaid claims weren't reported to the ombudsman. And students miss it. And the reason why they miss it is because it's at the bottom of this information. So by the time you've read through these first 2 pages and you get to this third page, you're now not concentrating on the information that you're given, because you're trying to find this part here where it says draft a letter, and you're trying to then just jump straight into it. Whereas you haven't categorized every bit of information. So you haven't said, why are they telling me this? Do I use it? So do I categorize it? Is it a question? No, it's not a question. Is it a fact or something that I'm going to use to answer a question? Yes, it is. There's a reason why they say none of the unpaid claims are reported to the ombudsman. Or is it background information? And I wouldn't say it's background, right? Because background, you wouldn't state it in your answer. I just want to jump back. Just you'll see that background information is something like you're an actuary working at Lifeco. It's a huge insurance company, so it's stuff that shapes your answer, but it's not necessarily stuff that you would use in your answer. You might, but it's not critical. And this is what I want to get the point across, is that when you approach your exam, it looks like this. I want you to then identify the red bits. I want you to find where in here, in these 3 pages, where are they asking me to do something, and what is it they're asking? And just be aware that there's a number of them. And you can see that if I jump, so you'll see that I highlighted this paragraph here as being quite a lot of red, and or to these 2 here. And you have to go through each sentence, because each sentence might have more than one instruction. So a sentence is not one instruction necessarily. You might have a sentence having a comma or an and, and it has 2 bits of information. And so you would want to answer those 2 bits of information. So we often see students answering the first bit of the information, but not the second bit of the sentence, right? And then you're missing something. So really take your time to find the instructions, write them out so that you have a skeleton. I don't know how you do it. What I would do is I underline them and I put little numbers next to it. So I know that there's 7, for example, categories that I have to answer. And then I take those 7 and I do my skeleton PowerPoint or letter or pamphlet, whatever it is that they've asked you to do, and use that then to then answer the question. And then you know those are my categories, those are my areas that I have to tackle, and then find the information throughout here that answers them. So once you've done that, that's basically, I've said here, find the instructions. These are the instructions according to me from this question. So you can see, draft a letter. That's probably the easy one. That's one we all see. We all see the fact that it says draft a letter, 625 words. We find this instruction very easily.
Jared, there's a question from Mhleli. He's raised his hand.
Yes.
Hi, Jared.
Hi.
Thanks, Billy. Just a quick question. Would it be possible to perhaps share what the marking schedule looks like, just to get an understanding? Because I know it makes sense to what you're referring to, but I mean, on our side, it doesn't make sense, just to get more or less an idea in terms of what it is you're looking for. Because I mean, honestly, it sort of becomes difficult to sort of grasp everything and detail it as how you guys want to see it. So
yeah,
it's just that missing gap between us and what you guys are looking for.
Yeah, totally. Great question. I do have it in one of my slides, so you'll have to sit and and pay attention, because it is in there. If it's not in because I've interpreted it, I'm also, it's probably not the best thing to show, but I could show you a snapshot of what the spreadsheet looks like. But I do have it in a slide, so it's
okay.
I'll show you exactly that, because I agree with you. I want you to know what I'm looking for. I want you to see, and often when I tell students and I show them in that way, they go, oh, I didn't know that's how you were looking for it. Because you might think that I'm sitting here marking this as broad as this, the official confirmation of the underwriting process. And then I've got, say, 10 marks to allocate to that. And it's very subjective as to whether I think you got 3 out of 10 or whether you got 10 out of 10. But it's not like that. There's actually detailed breakdown. I'm looking for specific words and areas that you've covered within this category of information. So we'll get to that. But great question. Yeah, and let me know when we do. Let me know if it's enough, and we can dig more.
Okay.
Cool. So yes, draft a letter. One of the big sections is now that he wanted official confirmation of the underwriting process. So the question has specifically asked to give official confirmation of the underwriting process. So that it may not be a huge category. It may very well be that you have to confirm that our underwriting process as an insurer is to underwrite you at application stage, and then not worry about the fact that your wellness results may show your health deteriorating over time. We're not going to use that. So he wants that. He wants official confirmation of your underwriting process. How the underwriting relates to the wellness program. So again, and these two might be tied in, but they were separately spelled out in the question, and you can go find these in the question. And so you would have to then make sure you can tick off and say, okay, official confirmation. I have in my letter, I've written how we officially underwrite. And how does that underwriting relate to the wellness program? Well, it doesn't. We don't use those underwriting results to affect your wellness program. And likewise, we don't use your wellness program to impact your underwriting or your claims. We don't do claims underwriting based on your wellness results. What we do use is the wellness program to give you a discount, and you maintain that discount. You get an upfront discount, and you maintain it on an ongoing basis as long as you can meet certain goals or show that you're healthy. But you'd lose the discount if you don't meet those goals. It has nothing to do with the underwriting at initial stage when you took out your insurance policies. And that really then tackles these 2 points if you get those in sufficient detail. But he's got concerns. Again, initial impact. And I've written these the way the question detailed them, so you can see this is coming out more than once, and it's showing you that you do need to tackle that. His other concern was the no spread of risk for the policies. Another one was the current life cover was very high. This is a good one. This current life cover very high might have been missed by many students because you didn't see it as a concern that he may have had. You might have seen that actually he's worried you're not able to pay the claim, so you tackle things like your capital adequacy ratio, or the fact that he's got reinsurance, or the insurer has reinsurance. But what you didn't say is actually your cover is half the cover of our maximum claim that we had last year, which was in the claim stats. So you had to put his mind at ease to say, yes, your cover may seem high, but it's not the highest we've seen, and it's certainly within the realms of our comfort levels. And that would be a tick for that point. You've covered it because my marking schedule has a point for this. And likewise, you can go through and you can find, and I want you to do that, go through it and go tackle the exam with the mindset that there's not one question, there are many questions, and there are many areas, and some need a lot more information than others. And that's just really that it forms the basis of your answer, and that's how you tackle these exams. But do it the way that makes sense to you. I just want you, if you take nothing else from this workshop other than the fact that the exam solution and the marker schedule is all structured around the fact that you have all these different areas of questions that have been asked, and if you tackle those areas and group them in a good way from a communication aspect and from a flow point of view, you'll really maximize your chances of passing. So this is the solution. I'm not going to go in detail through the actual solution, but what I want to draw your attention to is that this claims underwriting and spread of risk, you can see now that came through. I'm just going to jump back. He was really worried about the claims underwriting, how the underwriting process worked. And the spread of risk was his two main concerns. And that then straight away, we're saying, we understand these are your two main concerns, and we're going to tackle that. We're going to put your mind at ease. How does the wellness program and discounts work? I'm going to jump back. You see, how does the underwriting relate to the wellness program? It's an instruction in the paper. Now I want you to go find it and see it. Because often if you might look at the solutions that are put out there and you go, oh, I'm not sure I would have categorized it the same way. But and that's fine in a way. Just know that the way that this is categorized it's the main areas that you had to tackle. You might have done it slightly differently, and there are many ways to do a solution. You don't have to agree completely with the solution that's put out there on the actual website. But know that these are the areas that you had to tackle. And if you identified all the instructions, you would see that this was probably more the natural way to group it. And so we explain the wellness program and how the discounts process works. This was often missed out by students. They really didn't mention too much about how the discount works. For example, the fact that, or they did, and they said it was an initial discount, or they just said it was a discount. But there were two parts to the discount. There was an initial discount, and you had to keep completing online assessments every 2 years to keep the discount and keep your discount on an ongoing basis. And so it really was, there was more to it than just that. And the way you know that if once you've structured your question using the instructions, you can actually see then what are the main themes coming through, and I can see how much weight to give something. And you'll see that the claims, if I jump back, the fact that he's got, he's got high cover amount, he's concerned he's got high cover amount, he's worried that the insurer won't be able to pay the claim, or they'll avoid it, or they'll delay paying the claim using your underwriting results. And he's worried about the ability. This was interesting for me, is that it's paid faster if spread across insurers. That's what his thinking was, the client. But I didn't really see it in the solution, the model solution that was put out. So again, it's something maybe, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't see it out there. But it was another, in my mind, that's an instruction, and it should have been then tackled to say the fact that you spread it across different insurers may take longer actually to process your claim, because each insurer has to process a separate claim. Whereas if it's with one insurer, they process one claim and the full amount gets paid. And so it might actually result in a faster payout. And that's it. That explanation that I said would tackle that point. You don't want to wait. Your words are very precious. You don't want to waste words on sections.
Sorry, Jared, I just want to jump in there and say that we also liked that when people mentioned that, because it showed that the communicator, you as the communicator to this client, you'd taken into account what he had said exactly, and you were responding to them exactly. So it was an oversight in the solution, but perhaps it's just because you can't put every single thing in the solution.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a great point, Billy, because it's also, it shows you don't have to, and maybe this might sound like I'm contradicting myself here. If you missed one of these points, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will not pass, because some of them are minor compared to others, and this was one of them. This claims paid faster. If you missed that, it's worth 1 or 2 marks, but if you miss the fact that he's concerned about how the underwriting relates to the wellness program, that's a section, that's a whole category that's worth, I think, was 11 marks, and we'll see. It really, that's if you miss that, you're not going to pass, because then your solution, for 2 reasons, you've missed out on a whole bunch of marks, but also your solution then you didn't answer the question, the meat of it, and so your solution's not whole, if you know what I mean. So yeah, that's another. Yeah, just realize. I always tell students that it's for the calculation questions, for example, if you calculate something and you don't get it correct, it's not the be all and end all. You can still pass. It's not ideal. You don't want to answer something correctly, but sometimes you can get away with having an incorrect result and still passing. The last exam was a prime example of that. You could still get the incorrect values that were calculated, but you could still pass. And one student did actually. So this is then where they jump into address the concerns from an insurer's ability to pay. So they're saying from an overall point of view, we are financially strong. We have risk measures in place, such as reinsurance. We have regulatory obligations that ensure that our capital adequacy is fine. And you explain what is capital adequacy, and on that point in this one, it said that the CAR ratio was 3.2. So what that means is that you are 2.2 times more than what is required. And some students got this wrong. Some students said 3.2 times more. That's wrong, and that actually then can result in a negative mark, because you're making a serious misstatement there. So just be careful how you interpret things. It's just again, it speaks to that level-headedness. You can't always be right, but the calmer you are, the more likely you are to make sense. But exam stress does do strange things, and so this is the overall ability for the insurer to pay, because that was one of his concerns. The other concern he had was around his side, his claim, his specific claim, and the fact that his were quite high amounts. And that's what this then tackles, to say, well, your cover, don't worry about the cover that you've got. We'll put it at ease, is that your cover fits well within our tolerance levels. And, the 3 different types of cover that you have are exactly the categories that we have here with our claim statistics, and we can show you our claim stats. And then also the fact that you repudiated a very small amount of claims. But then you don't stop there. You don't just say, well, we repudiated, for example, here, 4% of claims were not paid. You would then put his mind at ease, because this is the exact thing he's worried about. He's now worried he's going to be 4 out of 100. He's the 4%. but you'd say which is unlikely to apply in your case. I feel like the solution could probably have been a little bit better worded there to just put his mind at ease. Why wouldn't it apply in his case? Because you could say then you could tie it to the broker, because remember the broker is the one that's dealing with it, and say because your broker has done a good job in covering you, or or speak to your broker to put your mind at ease about this. It shouldn't apply in your case, for example. Okay, so and then
sorry, Jared, I'd just like to agree with you wholeheartedly there. So for me, the solution did lack a little bit of that warm feeling, and it could have been from that there, for example, what you've just mentioned.
Exactly.
Could have been there. So this is just a sample solution, everybody. It's not. It's good to see that it's addressed everything, but it's not always that it's the most ideal.
Exactly right, and it's a great point that this sample solution has addressed all the concerns in the sense. Well, we've seen that it might have missed out on that the speed at which the insurer will pay out, but for the most part, it's tackled what you want, and it's a clear pass. So that's something to be aware of. This is a clear pass from both a technical and a communication point of view, but it's not, as Billy says, not the ideal solution. It's not the best one, and you may have one that's very different, but you can't have it so different as not tackling the same areas, because my marking sheet is looking for these areas. So just know that if you didn't do it quite the same way, that's okay. So what are some of the important technical points that I drew? Because I'm sure we said at the beginning that I'm a technical marker, so I'm looking from a technical point of view. I'm not marking yours from the communication aspect. Your papers are always marked by a technical marker who's an actuary, and then you get marked from a communications expert, and those two then are joined to see if you pass or not, and it's very objective. As I say, we'll go through how that looks. If you are a borderline pass or borderline fail, then there's a good chance that your paper gets remarked by the head examiner. So just know that it's a rigorous process. We're going through it in detail, and so don't feel that you're being hard done by if you didn't pass and feel that we missed something. It is quite a rigorous process. So from an important technical point, you had to explain how the wellness program works. I hope that's come across now. You had to explain how that you complete your assessment to earn the discounts, that the discounts are upfront and ongoing. You had to explain the reasons for doing so. And when I say had to, I'm talking about these are where the marks were coming from. Your reasons for doing so was often missed out. So a lot of students didn't mention why would we give you a discount for belonging to this wellness program? What is the point of the wellness program? And this then speaks to that higher order thinking. So if you had a level head and you constantly asking yourself, what does the customer want to know? Because his main concern is that wellness program is going to penalize him from a claims point of view. And what you have to tell him is it's not. And you have to tell him what is the point of it. The point is that we're trying to encourage healthy living. We want you to be aware of your health status. We want you to proactively manage your health. And if you said those things, first of all, it's worth 3 or 4 marks, which is great. But also it's tackling the communication piece, exactly that what you want. It's adding to your overall answer to put this customer's mind at ease. Because if you tell him what it's not, but you don't tell him what it is, then he might still be left questioning what it's all about. But the main purpose is not to underwrite or avoid payment. And so we had to really tackle this point. And then you had to show why isn't it? Because we are very financially strong. We are able to pay claims. Look at our history of claims payment. Look at our capital adequacy ratio. And you had to explain what CAR is, because not everyone knows what CAR is. And so you had to explain it in layman's terms, and so that he would then be comfortable that you are a financially strong insurance company, and that you have adequate risk management strategies in place like reinsurance that then allow you to make good on your claim liabilities. And then you make it specific to him, because as I said, then you use the claim stats and you show his comparison of his cover compared to what you normally pay, and the fact that he's not an outlier. You're not all sitting there sweating, worried that if he claims you're not going to be able to pay it. And I just want to put across there are lots of marks available. So if you tackle the right areas, you may not even tackle them in the best way possible. You might do it light here and heavy there, but if you tackle these areas, it's very difficult for you to then not pass from a technical point of view. So it's a key thing to be. Don't think if you just information overload and tackle the right areas, but forget about the fact that it's a communication aspect and it has to have good flow. It has to have right tone. You have to meet all the right format, for example, the right word counts. You need that aspect as well. But from a technical point of view, there are lots of marks available if you cover these categories. Okay, so now I think the next, yes. So this next slide will now tackle the question that came about to say, what is it that looks, what am I looking for as a marker? Now, I know this is a slide, it's not a spreadsheet, but I can promise you now this was taken almost word for word from the spreadsheet. But it's just a part of it, because I'm technically not allowed to show you the solution, but I can promise you this is exactly that. In my spreadsheet, there is a line that says there's a category that says wellness program, and then there's a line that says explain that the complete assessment to earn, you have to complete the assessment to earn discount. You get 2 marks for that. So if you explained that, and when I say explain, I'm talking about that you're telling the customer you complete your assessment, the wellness assessment, to earn a discount on your life premium. That's 2 marks. And you do it at the start of the policy, that's 1 mark. And you keep updating online biannually, so every 2 years, it's another 2 marks. So I mentioned before, a lot of students said you complete this assessment at the beginning. They got the 1 mark there, but they missed out on this 2 marks to say, but you have to keep doing it online or on a continual basis to keep that. That was worth 2 marks. My spreadsheet literally goes like this, then to say the reason. Remember, I mentioned the reasons for the wellness program is for healthy living. There was 1 mark for that. To encourage proactive managing, that was 2 marks. To have, to as I said, manage your health. And if you'd made a sensible comment there, we would also give you a mark. So, but there had to be a reason for you doing this health assessment or belonging to this wellness program. There was also one that literally said this: state clearly the purpose is not to underwrite. You see, that's worth 3 marks. So why is that so important? It's important because that's his main concern, or there were 2 main concerns. The one being that he's worried about the impact on his on the claims underwriting, and then his other concern was his cover amounts. But this was a key point. You had to state clearly in your answer that the purpose is not to underwrite. And if I went back to the solutions, I just say, we look here, the purpose of the wellness program assessment is to keep you aware of your health status so you can proactively manage your own health. Now you've seen my marking sheet, you know that was worth 2 marks. They will not use the results of the assessment to provide us with reasons not to pay your claims. That then is your 3 marks. It's not the purpose is not underwriting. So you don't have to say it exactly like that, but you're tackling that point, and I give you your 3 marks. It's to encourage healthy living. That was 1 mark. So do you see how this paragraph here in my marking sheet is sort of talking to these points here, and that's where you get these marks. The other section was the ability to pay claims. So I just pulled this one as well. If you mentioned that the largest claim is double the client's cover, you got 2 marks. Now, if you didn't mention that exact way, you might have said your cover is half of our largest claim, or we've had claims that are twice the size of your cover last year. However you say it, your intention is that you're saying that the claim of the cover of the client is well within our comfort levels. You would get 2 marks for that. If you mentioned the fact that it's 3.8 billion, so you had to do a bit of a tally there, you get 2 marks for that as well. If you explained what the suicide exclusion was, so remember they gave reasons why we would repudiate certain claims. If you explained the suicide exclusion, that was worth 1 mark. If you explained what material non-disclosure is, that's 2 marks, because that was given in the solution to say material non-disclosure, we disallowed claims. And the reason why you'd be explaining those is because the client is going to worry about when you don't pay claims. So you have to put his mind at ease. I don't pay claims under these scenarios. And not everyone knows what a suicide exclusion is. Not everyone knows what material non-disclosure is. So you'd have to explain it, and it's worth marks. But so I'm hoping that I'm answering the question that you can see what my spreadsheet looks like. It is very much like this. I put etc. here because obviously it's a lot bigger. There are a lot more marks available. Typically there are around, it could be about 5 marks, about 10% more available than what you could possibly get. So there are lots of marks available. Like you didn't, if you didn't say this 3.8 billion for all categories, you missed out on 2 marks. It doesn't mean that you fail. It just means that you want to maximize, you want to be using all of these bits of information, the meat of it, the facts that I mentioned, that second bucket, that category that I told you about. You want to be using that information in your solution because there are marks waiting for them. I've also put this block here. It's something to be aware of, and maybe students aren't aware of it because, well, you wouldn't be because it's part of my spreadsheet. But there are always 10 marks available for meeting the objectives. And what the objectives are, they are always tied in with the instructions. So I'm going to go back to the instructions that I got. So I found these instructions, or actually if I show you how this is laid out, the claims and underwriting spread of risk. So what the objectives will say in my spreadsheet will say something along the lines, will the client understand how his wellness program relates to the claims underwriting? And if your solution has tackled that area, you would get 3 marks or whatever it may be. It's typically 2 or 3 marks for that. And then it would also say, will the client understand how the wellness program works with the discounts? And you'd get marks for that. And so the objectives at the end, there's 10 marks available for meeting the different areas that you had to meet from a communication aspect. Did you tackle them? And what this means is a bit of a double whammy, because what it means is that the good attempts, the students that tackle all the areas, are already scoring marks because they've tackled all the areas. So they when they're going through this, they're tackling the wellness program and they're hitting all these things. But the fact that they've tackled the wellness program, now they get a double whammy in the objectives, because now there's 3 out of these 10 marks is got to do with the wellness program. So they would typically score well in there as well. And so what it does is it causes this bit of a gap between the good attempts and the not so good attempts. And so just know it's another big reason why it's difficult to pass if you don't find those instructions or those areas that you have to tackle. But if you do find them, you're getting marks not only for the area when you're answering it, but you're also getting, because you're meeting the objectives of the communication piece. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to go to the common mistakes, but I'm going to just pause there because I want to know, first of all, is this sufficient to sort of see how we mark, or do you need more convincing?
It does give an idea. Thanks, Jared. Thank you for that. It does give some context.
Some, but not all.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very naughty here quickly, and Billy has to just close her eyes because I don't want to.
No, it's fine. We'll do it quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to show you, because I don't quite believe you. I think you sound like you're convinced, but you're not too convinced. I just want to see. I'm just opening a spreadsheet just quickly, because I didn't have it. Can find the right one. Sorry, there's always 2. God, did have it. Yeah, did have it open actually. Okay, so I just want to hide some student results. I want to show you something because you don't believe me. So this is this exam's marking schedule. And this is what I had this on the slide. Wellness program. You've got 2 marks to say if you explain, did you complete the assessment to earn the discounts? 1 mark each. Did you mention that it's at the policy start? 1 mark for that. Keep updating online by any. That's 2 marks. And you can see all the marks available. I don't know if this one added up okay, this was 40, but a lot of the time there are more than, there's normally about 44 marks, 45 marks available just for this. And so we go through all of this. And then you get your marks, the student numbers at the top, and you get your marks. And then just very quickly, I want to show you the objectives. You get 4 marks if I believe you've satisfied that the program is for discount only and that the initial assessment is not for further underwriting. So in other words, did you tackle his main concern? You get 4 marks. Or I might say you get 3 out of the 4 because you didn't quite hit it. You got half for that and full marks for that one. The next objective. Is he comfortable that your capital position and your risk management strategies are adequate to meet your general claim obligations? That's 3 marks. So do you see how this objective section ties in with the main section? And so then your 40 plus your 10 gives you your 50.
Okay. No,
So,
thanks a lot, Jared. I'm convinced now.
Yeah, great. So that's literally, that is the spreadsheet, and every exam has that. This one looks different to other ones because some have a lot of marks available, some have a lot less. This one is probably more on the lesser side in the sense that a lot of the categories were chunky. So there were, you saw a lot of 4s there and 3s. Some of them there's a lot of 1s. It makes it's much more difficult to mark because there's a lot more areas, but there are a lot more marks for the students to gain. So and that's how we mark it. It's very objective, I can promise you that. But it's if you can find the areas to mark, find those instructions, you are then able to tackle those areas that I'm looking for. And what you will note on that spreadsheet is that there's not areas for ad-libbing, or there's no areas for if it said, was the student, did they make really clever marks about something else? And I mean, I say that, but there is an area that I can do addition, so I can give you a bonus mark, but it's very difficult to get a bonus mark. And if you say something that the markers didn't really think of, you might get a 1 mark for a bonus mark. It's not worth trying to say something that's not part of the question to just try and get a 1 mark, because generally you're wasting your words and you're going off on a tangent that's not part of the marking schedule. So I guess my point is always try to stick to the instructions, answer the instructions, and use the information that they've given you to answer that, and you'll be fine. Don't worry about trying to get bonus marks. So what are the common mistakes that we saw with this exam specifically? And a lot of these common mistakes are universal across for other exams as well, but not answering the instructions is the obvious one, right? And I guess the reason for that is just failing to prepare your plan. Is that maybe now I'm hoping that there's a bit of a light bulb that you're going, I didn't realize that actually when it said question 1, that what it meant was there are about 7 different questions in here, and I need to answer all those 7. The main one was his concerns, right? It even said in there he's got 2 main concerns, and then it said firstly, and it said about the assessment process impacting his claims underwriting, and then it said secondly, he's worried about the spread of his risk, his cover amount. So there it tells you he's got 2 concerns. You had to cover those 2 concerns, and that formed the basis of your answer. And a big one was the inadequate explanation of the point of a wellness program, because that was worth 3 or 4 marks, just on that. The reason for the wellness program was worth about 4 marks. But then also, how does the wellness program work? How do the discounts work upfront versus ongoing? And what do we use the wellness program for? That in total, that wellness program area, if you saw on that spreadsheet, was about 11 marks, I think. And if you don't cover it adequately, then you're not giving it the due respect and you're not getting all the marks. So again, it's just sort of failing to prepare that, to realize that was part of the instructions. Another mistake we saw was that the claim stats were not adequately used. So a lot of students either just ran over those stats, maybe some didn't use them, some just maybe dumped the table in your answer. I know that was a few of you did that. That doesn't help in the sense that you're not, you might be overwhelming the client, first of all, from a communication point of view. He's concerned that you don't just then dump a whole bunch of figures, because what's in those figures, it's sort of saying, we don't pay claims for 4% of the time, and he might worry, he's part of the 4%, as I say. So you have to really just address those concerns. You have to use that information. There's a reason why it's given to you. And if I jumped back, you would have seen that that claim stats table are highlighted in yellow, which meant that it's facts that I have to use to answer my instructions. The instructions being that he's worried about the claims not being paid. So you then address those concerns and you use it, but then make that information relevant to him. And again, it's not reading the question properly to see that that was part of the concerns, or you just copy paste, not keeping a level head, for example. And then another big one that we saw was the no explanation of the risk management strategy, or so, for example, the reinsurance. And Billy said, I'm in reinsurance, so I always say it's important. It is important in this one because I think it was worth about 3 marks, but it was important in the sense that you had to show the client that we have this financial backing, that we are able to pay your claims, and you have to explain what the reinsurance is. And I think it was very simply explained in the solution, just saying that it's sort of insurance for insurers, and that's fine. That's perfect, because he might not many people know what reinsurance is. I mean, you can ask your family members; they might look at you, not know what you're talking about. And then the capital adequacy ratio was also too light for a lot of students. They just mentioned it. Or they didn't mention it at all. That's even worse. If you just, because what you're telling me then, if you don't mention it at all, is that you read it in the exam, you read where it said car is 3.2, and you decided that it's not relevant to your answer. In other words, it's background information. Remember, I said there's 3 categories. It's either a question or an instruction, or it's a fact or the meat of it, or the third one, it is background or context. And if you don't use it in your answer, you're telling me that it's context and I didn't need it. But the fact that they say in the car is 3.2 doesn't sound like background information. That's really giving you information to use in your answer. So use it because there are marks available for it. Okay, so I'm hoping that helps. That's question 1. So I just, yeah, and I see we're a little bit over an hour now, but I think I've been talking for an hour. But so I want to pause before we go into question 2. But what are the questions? Did some of that resonate with you, or did you know that there are a bunch of questions, and maybe you've got something else to ask me that I can help you with in terms of question 1 or in general? I'm just going to pause there. Some of you must have questions. You've got to be brave.
Hi, Jared. Oh,
Hi.
sorry. It's Manga. I noticed that in the well, with the table, like when I initially see like the table, I would think like to include everything, like and just plunk it in the solution. But I noticed that you summarized, like you gave like a 4% 4% like rate of claims not being paid. My question is really like, when do you know when to summarize the table? Because I would think that they would want to know for each of the different covers, because it's not 4% for each of them. Like, how do you know when to summarize and just give a 4% instead of actually being accurate and, being detailed with your... I struggled with that in this question.
No, for sure. And again, I guess this speaks to the point that there are many ways to answer. So you might very well have looked at this table and said, I actually think it's important that I mention that 4.2% of death claims were not paid for this, 2.8% of disability claims were not paid, 3 point, and you broke it down like that. But I would argue that this question, he wasn't concerned from my death claim not being paid versus my disability versus my critical illness. That a lot of the question really spoke about his cover in total, and he was worried about not paying claims. He didn't mention what type of claims, or just in total. So the question, it was subtle, but it was really guiding you more towards looking at it in total rather than individually. Having said that, if you did break it down, you wouldn't. It wouldn't be wrong. You might, and from a technical point of view, I mean, you might have got half marks, and I can't recall actually if we allowed half marks for individually without doing it from an overall point of view. But from a communication point of view, you might then be inundating a client that's already concerned, and now you're throwing a whole bunch of numbers his way. Whereas if you look at the solution, they did it very nicely to sort of say, in order to put your mind at ease, I'm going to summarize our most recent claim stats. And then they talk about it. You see, there's no table yet. You could have done a table. No problem doing a table as long as you explain the table. And it's one of my points that I make later on, but I can make it here, is that whenever you do a table or a graph, always, always, always give an example of what you're seeing, because and you'll see it in the table that we do in the next question. You have to assume that your audience doesn't look at a graph the way we look at a graph. You guys have been trained to look at graphs. You can summarize data very well. You can visualize graphs or data very well. You understand what a graph is saying very quickly compared to someone who doesn't look at that very often. And so don't assume that when you put a beautiful table there with all the numbers, because we all love our numbers, when you put it out there, don't assume your audience it's adding to your question to your answer. The audience might detract from it, because now the audience is even more scared that they say, oh no, you're just throwing numbers my way, and I don't like that. So you really have to take your audience into account, I would say, and then just what the question was saying. And it's not completely wrong, as I say, if you did go in the different categories, but nowhere, I guess, in his concerns was he concerned about the specific different categories. He was concerned from an overall point of view. Can you pay my claim? And so that's why I would say in overall, you could say 4%. And I hope you all found out where that 4% comes from, right? Because obviously it's obviously a sort of weighted average of these. So if you summed up all the claims that weren't paid, basically, then as a total of the cover, you'll get your 4% or slightly lower, I think it was. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question. It's not. I can't give you an exact. You can't. There's no. That's the thing about this exam. It's not exact. We're giving you sort of guiding principles, but you really have to interpret it your way. And you can, if there's 20 students, there are going to be 20 different versions of an answer, and that's okay.
No, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Itumeleng, you want to say something? You can unmute yourself.
Hi. Yeah, thanks, Billy, and thanks, Jared. I just had a question with acknowledging the client's concerns. So one of the things that was mentioned with my attempt was that in my acknowledging their concern, I kind of reinforced their concern as opposed to acknowledging them. So then my question is, how do you strike that balance to put them at ease that yes, you acknowledge that they have this concern without reinforcing it or giving them more reason to panic more than they already are, for example?
Yeah, and that's, I'm probably going to defer to Billy, but what I do want to say is, so when you have a community, because often an exam is a concerned client or someone that has a problem that you're trying to put their mind at ease. What I would encourage you to do is read how the tone of this letter, how they do it, where they say, thank you for your inquiry. This letter outlines to address your concerns. It's all positive. There's a lot of positive language here. I would actually even say it was a little bit, from my point of view, I'm generally a positive person, so I think this is even slightly negative. I mean, Billy even mentioned that where it said something about it wouldn't apply in your case. This part here is a little bit negative, and I agree. I would have done it a little bit softer. But if you then say, thank you for your concerns. Your concerns are, valid because sometimes we don't pay claims, for example. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what you did, but if you did that, then that's when you are reinforcing their concerns, right? That's it, and it's not a good. That's a negative way to start a contract. You should, if you said thank you for your concerns, we pay claims 98% of the time or 99% of the time, whatever it may be. That's a lot better to start off. So you do have to signpost. You do have to say what the letter is about and what you're going to be talking about in a subtle way. But you must always keep your audience in mind. What are their worries, and don't play on those worries. And just before Billy jumps in there, because it is more of a communication aspect than a technical point, I do want to say that a good example was the last exam, actually, that and I don't know if you looked at the last exam, but there was a farm worker that was owed money, and both parties were interested in that money amount. And so the worst part that you could do is keep them waiting right to the end of the communication piece before you tell them what the amount owed is. Whereas every party is interested in that amount. So the best thing you could have done is state upfront in your opening paragraph, the amount that I've come to is this, and let me explain how I got to this. And so that is great from a communication point, but you don't always want to do that. Sometimes you do want to build suspense, but you have to really think about your communication piece. But yeah, is there something that you want to add there?
Jared, that's great what you said, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. And thank you very much for that question, Tumeleng. So the thing is that this is context as well that you would have got from the question paper of what you're going to put in that opening paragraph that doesn't place you in a position where you have to then struggle to make it clear that it's above board and everything is fine. So you want to acknowledge the concerns and the inquiry. Here, it's not the same as somebody coming to you and saying that I've been quoted X, but in fact, or the quote must be wrong, or the amount is wrong because I didn't calculate it that way. It doesn't make sense. So in that type of response, you want to say upfront that it's correct and that it is a particular amount. But and the way in which you would do it is to soften it, but it can be misconstrued as it may be counterintuitive. For example, that phrase really does cover quite a bit. That phrase, and I'm going to show you how to arrive at the amount which is correct or whatever, and you give that amount. But you would have seen with the feedback on the communication side with the letters that it is useful if you're struggling with this to go from the general to the specific. And this is what this letter has done, because it's addressed, it said, thank you for your inquiry. And this letter outlines some details that should address your concerns. But, you could have said it differently, use different words, but the essence of it is that you are allaying the fears or concerns of the client up front. And yeah, so it is a matter of practicing and finding yourself in different scenarios where a different response might be more appropriate. So it wouldn't fail you necessarily, but it does if that tone is not appropriate, not warm enough. It was important for this to be warm. He'd asked for clarity in the very beginning, and assurance. Sorry, he'd asked for assurance, and he got this little email back from Andy Murray. And I mean, that's not good at all. And so, and there's no acknowledgement here in this letter that was there. So you need to be like extra nice, actually, and warm in that opening. Yeah. So that's when you got to interpret where that tipping point for the balance, so-called, is. I hope that helps, Tumeleng. But there is no set answer. There's no perfect answer to that question. It is a matter of your intuition and trying to create a balance. Okay, so you don't go overboard one way or the other. Sorry, go for it, Jared.
No, sorry, I was going to say maybe it'd be worth rereading what you wrote and then compare it to this and just be hard on yourself, but just try to look at it from that point of view and just say, was my tone a little bit more negative than this, or was it condescending, for example, or was it off? Where's the marker coming from? I did want to make a point that Billy touched on there just while we're on the sort of this introduction. This is a very good way to, the tone is great, and what they've done very subtly is that they've signposted what the letter's about. So you can say this, as Billy said, this letter outlines some details that should address your concerns about the wellness program and the ability to pay claims, right? And the fact that then those are your categories, it's signposted, right? We can all see that, but it's done it in a nice way to sort of still add to the question. What I really don't like, and I'd be keen if Billy agrees with me here, but what I saw another student do, actually it was in the past exam as well, was that they said, in this letter I will discuss, and then it was literally bullet pointed. So never mind the fact there wasn't a paragraph, it was bullet point, and you could see it was clearly they were still in PowerPoint mode, because the first question was a PowerPoint, I think, and they did the second question second, and they did it like a PowerPoint. So don't do that, in the sense that it's, in my mind, that's not adding to the question. You really don't be so obvious with your signposting that you're actually detracting from the tone, but you're also then wasting words. You can be subtle in signposting and telling the reader what your letter's about, but still add to your solution. It's a very subtle point, and I encourage you to read through past papers to see what it is that I'm talking about. That it doesn't have to be so obvious that you say, this is what my letter's about, because often students do that, and I think we might be told or might have missed that that's what you're supposed to do. Your signposting is very good, but try to do it in a subtle way that adds to your question. I don't know, Billy, if that makes sense. So if you agree with
So,
me.
Jared, I think you're right there, especially with this letter, because now you have used an organizational structure that is, you've already used the bullet points. So you wouldn't use bullet points in your opening paragraph. Your opening paragraph is leading your reader into this conversation that you're having with them, and the conversation, you're going to use your headings, etc. However, I mean, you don't want to be too much of an umbrella and say that this letter outlines some details that should address your concerns, full stop. So you could argue that I've told them that I'm going to address their concerns. That is far too much of a general thing. That is not specific enough. That is not giving signposting. That's not sufficient. So that's where you would get your balance. Okay. So you would actually put that in there. But what has happened, importantly, there has been a parallel structure, and here it's subtle because the bullet points were not subtle. But here it says the wellness assessment program, right? And that's the first thing that it comes up. So there's your parallel structure starting. So the first thing you mention in that open paragraph is the first thing that you go into detail about. And the second, so it follows that sequence. All right. And then, of course, the payment of large claims, which is the last major thing that is discussed. So there we have that. I do see there are other questions, and it's great to have the questions because this is how we learn from each other as well. So thank you very much for those. So should we go into the next one? I think Palesa, you were sorry, Jared. I'm going to just get these questions because they will be useful. Palesa, you were next, and then Dana, and then.
So Jared, I just want to go back to the merits of using a table versus just outlining it in sentences. So I found situations where I'm struggling. I usually struggle to choose between whether or not to use a table when I'm answering emails or letters. Have you seen situations where tables are the best way to answer a letter, to include in a letter, or would you rather recommend straight sentences like in the solution here, where they just say 4% of claims are this and that, or would you rather do a table? So choosing between the two.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and I must admit, I'm probably, and maybe many sort of similar to all of you, saying that I would rather go towards a table rather than using just words, because you feel like you're missing something. But just again, it sort of speaks to the individual question. You have to really deliberately use a table where you want to use a table, or even a graph where you want to use a graph. Having said that, if the question, and a lot of the questions do that, say use a graph to do this, or use at least one graph, and you'll see there are many questions like that. Don't then go use a table, for example, or don't not use a graphic at all. So that's one thing, just to get out the way. This question, however, didn't say anything about a table, so there was that. So there weren't specific marks sitting waiting for you to use a graphic. But again, I sort of go to the overall concern of this customer. He wasn't questioning, your ability to pay death claims versus your critical illness claims, for example. He was worried from an overall point of view. But if you had tabulated that overall view, so let's say you said our largest claim, I've summarized our claim statistics in the table below, which should put your mind at ease about our ability to pay, or our track record. And then you had this table in a way that you've got largest individual claim versus your claim, so, and you had, just as an example, maybe the death claims, or from a total point of view, or whatever it may be, you can say maybe from a total cover point of view, you can add up these ones and then have his cover and compare it. And then you showed that his cover was 50% of that, for example. Then I think a table is great. I think you're then explaining it very nicely. And, your total claims paid, that maybe you can't contrast to what he's saying. But if you had total claims paid for all benefits and you added those up, repudiated claims and you had the weighted percentage, and the claims were, declined for these reasons were the 4%, then I think a table is absolutely fine if that's your way of showing that information. But again, make sure you don't just dump that table in and move on and think, I've ticked that box. He should be able to read that table and have no problem. I would then talk about, and I mentioned whenever you do a table or a graph, use an example, and this one would be a key one. Let's say you did this table and you said the largest claim paid, total cover versus your cover, and it shows the 50%. Then you can mention at the bottom and say, as you can see above, our largest claim last year was twice your claim, or your cover amount is 50% of our largest claim paid in the last financial year. Then you're making this table real for the customer, for the client, and you've summarized the data, you've used a table, and that made you feel better, and that was something that you thought would show these statistics better. Then I have no problem with that, and you'd get your marks. Billy, from a communication point of view, would you be happy with that as opposed to words?
Most definitely, I would be happy with that. But you have to have the word count, because whatever you put in the table is also counted. And as I would just want to support what Jared has said, is an interpretation for the reader. You are giving them the interpretation of the table. You're not just plonking the table there and then they don't know what to do with it. You have to bring to life the points that you want them to take away from that table. So, and embedding it in the text, as Jared has said, in the above table, you will see it's 50%, whatever. So you've really you've integrated it. And what we don't like is if you just simply take the table, cut and paste it, and put it in because somebody said have a table rather than don't have a table. No, there must be some enhancement. So in that example that Jared has given, he enhanced that by putting the comparison of the reader, Mr. Chisholm, and what they did, so that these two are side by side and you can see the difference. So that was very important. So thank you very much for that, Jared. So we've got Dana and Mortalatsi and Bongani. Would you like to still to have your questions quickly? Let's see. I do think it's important, but we just have to be mindful of time. Dana?
Hi, thanks, Billy. Thank you, Jared, so very much. My question is with the opening paragraph. If you can just go back to, I think it's slide. There you go. Thank you. So my concern is just with the opening line is thank you for your inquiry. So to my understanding, the inquiry came from Bongani. So that's why I opened up with saying, I don't know if this is overkill, but to say, I trust this letter finds you well. I'm writing to you in response to your recent interaction with my colleague. And I just want to understand, is that appropriate just because of the line of communication came from Bongani addressing Dan's or Mr. Chisholm's concerns?
Yeah, and again, I'll leave Billy to round that off, but I think either is fine, totally. You're right from a point of view that they weren't sending the inquiry straight to you. It was more to a colleague, and you could have said thank you for your inquiry to via Bongani, for example. I think the thank you part is probably a little bit more warmer than just saying I refer to your recent correspondence, as an example. Just saying. So just always be aware of the tone, because this is not an irate customer. He's not irate, but he is concerned, and you want to just then be warm towards him. But I don't see an issue with how you've positioned that. But Billy, what's your?
I agree with you, Jared. That's great, but I'm not too sure if it would say that I hope that this finds you well, because you don't want to be too familiar when in fact you've got a lot of detail, a lot of clinical stuff to get through, but you also want to be warm. And it's warm enough if you've acknowledged the feedback you gave my colleague Bongani, and thank you for pursuing it. This letter, and then you go into that, is going to deal with whatever. So I, from a communication perspective, I felt that somewhere acknowledging Bongani would be a very good thing, because this is that did come through that route. But it's not going to give, it's going to give you marks on tone and actually addressing concerns directly from the client. So that was very good from our side, from the communication perspective. And it helps, right? It all helps. It's so much better than not having a good tone in the beginning, because that can be very off-putting. So that, I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Jared.
Great. Okay, so Motlatsi, what did you have?
Okay, so this is Palisa number 2. I'm just using someone else's
Okay.
Teams account.
That's great.
Okay, so this might be a question for you, Billy and Jared. So I personally struggle with breaking down the technical facts that we get from the question and conveying it to the targeted audience in a manner that they can understand, but also including all the relevant information. For example, like breaking down the car. I really struggle with knowing what the audience would understand, and also not being too condescending and over explaining and using my word count, I guess, not efficiently. So what are some of the tips that you have, or something that I can keep at the back of my mind just to always remind me to stay on track in terms of keeping it nice and short, but also being able to explain adequately?
Yeah, it's a great. I guess you've summarized what the the plight of the student is when it comes to this exam. That's why I guess to find these instructions. So this would be my suggestion, is make sure you practice and go through past papers and do this. Practice finding the questions, right? The instructions, as I call them. So once you have those, you can then group them. And I've just done them. Sorry, I've just done them sort of in this way, because I think this was almost how they appeared in the paper. But you can then categorize them into broad themes. And the themes, if you really go through this, you'd see the themes are really about the wellness program and how it impacts underwriting, and then the ability to pay claims. Those are the two. And why, what sort of strengthens that is the fact that the letter said his two concerns are, and then said firstly and secondly. So you that kind of guides you that these are the two main themes, and you'll see that's how the solution is structured as well. But once you've got these instructions, then you sort of said, oh, I'm struggling how to then see what to answer. Then you can group them into themes that make sense, and you've got those themes. Then you start going through answering those themes and answering the in this case the concerns, but by using the information they've given you. And because you've now read through and you've categorized certain, and I do understand it is difficult to, you're not going to highlight everything in yellow, for example, because you want to use, there were marks available for all these yellow bits in a way, and you won't use all of it word for word, but you should read through all of it and see how I'm going to use that in my response. And it really is, I guess, practice. And I would encourage you to go through past papers, find the instructions, and do a skeleton. So that's what I always tell students, is use those instructions to write a skeleton. Now, you're not doing a draft copy before you do your real copy, because you don't have time to do that. But a skeleton is in, these are the themes I want to tackle. And then you can start mentioning the bits of information that you're going to put in to those themes. For example, the one theme would be your wellness program and its impact on your underwriting, or the underwriting impact on wellness. And you would, in there, you'd say how the discounts work, the fact that it's upfront and ongoing. You can just scratch that, and what's the point, you could write, question mark. And so you then writing details of what you're going to then populate in those themes when you write your letter. And I would encourage you to, I think we get 15-minute reading time, but it's really spend 20 minutes going through the planning, 25 minutes even. You then, the time that you use in planning will save you minutes down the road, because I promise you, if you dive headfirst into the exam and you go down rabbit holes and you're not sure that you've said enough words here or you have tackled the right things, you're then losing lots of marks. But if you actually have your structure right, it then becomes very easy and very quick to put your answer together. And then your answer also makes sense holistically. And so then you also mentioned something about saying, if I've written too much about one topic, I would always, when you know that you're tackling, let's say, the wellness program and its impact on the ability, the claims underwriting, you still know that you've got other themes. You've got the ability to pay claims, and so you can't use all your words there, for example. But keep, and I've mentioned in the next question, but keep asking yourself, so what? What am I trying to say, and have I said it? So once you populate that section, you say, did I answer what I wanted to answer? And be critical, take a step back and read it. Because often what we think we wrote is not actually what we put down. And it's very easy to waffle as you go through answering something. You might do too many words. So did you say it in the most succinct way? And then my last bit of advice would really just be practice this. Write a letter and give it to your family, give it to your colleagues. If you're working, give it to your friends. Just say, is this the best way? Did it hit the right notes? You know, if you've got access to someone who's passed this exam, you can ask them, be critical of my attempt, and did I write it in the way that you would expect, and did I say this in the best way possible? And look, compare it to the solution, see how they do it, because there's subtle things to do. Not sure if that answers your question, because it's a very broad question in the sense that it is exactly what this exam plan is trying to do, is to guide you to answer the right sections, but you have to do it in a succinct way.
Are you all right with that then?
Yes, happy. Thank you.
Okay, just to reiterate, the instructions are key, but so is your audience. So you need to know, you need to serve both. And for example, in the last paper last semester, you were to provide the table. It was clear that from the instructions, well, actually not so much the instructions, from the actual context and what the examiner was writing there, that you should tabulate the full workings so that that Mr. Orchard could see the accuracy. But this all depends on your audience, you know. So as mentioned, you don't want to bamboozle them with a whole lot of figures. So you watch for that. And on the language side, you wouldn't mention car. You would actually mention what car means. And you wouldn't even have to say, first of all, we've got our capital asset ratio is fine. No, you wouldn't say that for this, because you want to be sure that Mr. Grissom understands what that means, for example. And then also maybe not use the word repudiated, but use words of what it means more than that word, because it's quite a big word. So it's the same thing with figures, you see. It's a similar, the principle is the same. The clarity for that audience is important. Okay, so Bongani, please. Can you go ahead with your question? Thank you. Bongani, are you with us?
Very, very softly.
Hello, can you hear me?
There, yes.
Okay, sorry. Quick one. I wanted to find out between and your heading, right? So for example, let's say maybe my heading is like ability to pay claim, and then my opening statement or sentence will be like, in this section below, I'll be explaining how the company is committed to honor your claims, right? It seems like that signposting might already addressed by the heading itself. So I'm trying to find out what's the balance between the signposting and the heading itself. And then the second one is the level of detail when you're writing this thing. Like for example, is it okay if I say the purpose of this wellness program is it's an incentive package, right? And without me having to go in detail, what's in those what are those incentives, if I'm making sense, like the level of details that I should be putting in there. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think your mic broke up a little bit there, but I'm going to try answer, getting a bit of feedback as well. You just put it on mute maybe, and we can. Yeah, that's better. I'm sorry. So it was a little bit difficult to hear you there, but I think your first question was around about the signposting and maybe the level of detail you put in your opening paragraph, and where's your headings. The fact that it's got it there. I would always err on the side of you don't want to waste too many words in your opening paragraph, right? So you want to get into the detail as quickly as possible, because your opening paragraph, from a technical point of view, often doesn't carry many marks. So just that's something to be aware of. But now I know Billy's would kick me under the table if she was in the same room as me, because it's very important from a communication aspect to set the right tone, to guide the reader from a signposting point of view, which comes to your question, I guess. So it's a fine balance, and I would encourage you, again, just read through past solutions to see how that is achieved and how they do that, because you don't want to spell it out like the bullet point form, but you also don't want to just say thank you for your inquiry and then jump straight into the heading, because then it's disjointed. But there's a subtle way to connect the different pieces as you go, and that's something that you can only do through practice and looking for it. And it's even not just in a letter. You can see it in a PowerPoint as well. You can tie slides together by putting a box at the bottom saying, what does this mean? And the next section answers what it means. You know what I mean? So you're linking the two sections in a way. But I suppose slides have an agenda as well, so it shows you, it signposts more clearly that way. It is a subtle skill. Yeah, that's, I guess, what I want to say about that. Your second question has completely jumped out of my head now. Can't remember what it was. Sorry. What was it? The level of detail? You said that there was, if you had to go into too much detail.
Like, at what level of detail? Yeah, too much detail. For example, can you say it's giving more be specific on the incentives that are in there?
Yeah, and so I get the level of details. Sorry, there's just feedback again. I'm struggling with your mic. The level of detail is very much guided by the question and what themes you took out of it. So if it's a main theme, and the reason why we knew the wellness program was a main theme here is because it said his two main concerns are. So you couldn't just brush through the wellness program. What you would want to do is you want to give it its due respect, but you want to use the information that was given to you in the question. Now, having said that, the point of a wellness program wasn't given to you in the question, right? It didn't say it's to encourage healthy living and proactive management. So if you missed that piece, you would be in the majority of the students. Most students missed that piece. All it means is that you didn't get the 3 marks that were available for that point. It doesn't mean you wouldn't pass. There are students that passed this exam who never made that point. But the students that did pass this gave the wellness program sufficient amount of time and respect and detail to be able to get the marks that were available from that section. So it's very much be guided by the instructions that you've found and the themes that you've grouped those instructions into, to be able to see how much weighting you want to apply to your answer. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, I'm quickly going to jump in here. Sorry, Bongani. I want to say that this letter, in the opening paragraph, it says about going to address your concerns about the use of the wellness program, assessment outcomes for claims assessment, and the possibility the life co will delay or even avoid the payment of large claims. So there is no need for you to have a lead-in sentence and now I'm going to discuss the wellbeing program and discounts, or after that to be finished to say, and now I'm going to discuss Lifeco's ability to pay claims, overall claims. This is not a long document, remember, and you're also guided by the word count. And so it is quite acceptable that if your introduction has the embedded in it, what you're going to cover, then you can go directly into those headings, because we deem you to have introduced them at a high level already. So I hope that covers the question you had about like a topic sentence leading into, etc. There's no word count for that.
Yep,
Yes.
no, I'm happy. Thank you, guys.
Great. Okay, so sorry, Jared, and we're running quite behind, and this does depend on your availability, Jared. If we can go into the next question, because there is, you know, it's a time allotted, and I'm just wondering if you would have maybe a few minutes over.
Yes, no, I'm available, so that's fine.
That's a great relief.
Yeah, the question 2 won't be as long because we've outlined this exam plan, but I do want to. So can I jump to it?
Yes,
Silly?
I think so. I'm sorry we're not taking a break, and everybody, but you know, we'd like to. I'm sure you've had your little sip of water, coffee, whatever in the meantime. So we're going to go for it. Thank you, Jared. Thank you.
Sure. And I wanted to reiterate. So you'll see the agenda for question 2 is exactly the same as the agenda for question 1 in the sense that there's an exam plan, and I'm just doing this so that I reiterate that exam plan, and then we'll go through the question, the solution, and the common mistakes. So just to show you the slide again, the exam plan, don't rush through your exam. You want to read through the exam, the question, you know, 3 times or whatever it is that your technique is, but 3 times is a good time, a good amount to really get a grasp of it, where you're trying to understand the situation, what the problem is. You're trying to understand who the audience is. What are they asking? What do you have to answer? And what they are asking is these instructions. So your goal is to find these instructions and know that that whole exam has 3 categories of information. The first category is the most important. It's the instructions. It's what you have to tackle. And then you know that they've written other things to back up those, to give you the tools to answer them. And then the context is really that guiding, that background information helps you, guides you towards the right tone, the right medium of communication, etc. So each sentence is important. Just be aware of that. Okay, so this question was quite an interesting one, actually. Yeah, if you do it without exam stress, I guess it was quite a fun one. And it was very much about finding the most profitable outcome or maximizing profit. And it was you're mentoring a school class, and so you have to already, you know, when it says you're a mentor for business studies for the school, you have to already then start thinking about your audience is a class, you know. And then when you read through it, you actually see they were in grade 11, but actually they're now in grade 12, so they're matric class. It already makes you think about the tone, you know, the audience that you can't use very sophisticated financial terms because it is still school children, but they do then tell you you can use certain words, and we'll get to that, you know, like cost price and sales price, and they understand profits, and that's good. They tell you that they understand some of those, because then you're comfortable enough to know that I can include that in my answer. But that does hint at the fact that don't try use terms that they, you know, you're not going to go return on equity, for example. I mean, you wouldn't, but you understand what I'm saying. But the goal was that they want to maximize profit for the class by selling a mix of vegetables. And this mix, they used to sell butternuts, and it had a fixed sale price and a fixed cost price. And now your goal is to now convince them that possibly introducing cauliflower, which has a fixed cost price but a varied sell price, as that table shows, the more you sell, the lower the sales price would be per unit. That this could possibly maximize your profit. You are constrained in the sense that you only have 10 vegetables per your vegetable garden, so you can't, you know, if you had infinite space, then that's a different story, because then your maximizing profit is a different ball game there. But you only have 10 vegetable spots per week. That's also important. Just whenever there's a per week, or it's a per period, as I call it, per annum, or if there's an interest rates, it's often with interest rates, please make sure that you write per week or per annum or per day or per month, whatever it may be, because we have marks. And if you're talking about an interest rate, and it's 8% per annum, and you say 8%, and it's easy to do. I promise you, you'd be surprised that you write it without thinking about it. You just write the interest rate was 8%, but you don't put per annum. I can't give you a mark from a technical point of view because I don't know what period you're writing. What it could be 8% per day. It's very different from per annum. So just make sure that you write that per period. And this question is a classic, I'll say, maximization problem. It's just you just have to find the maximum profit. It was a presentation. And remember when I said when they give you a range, so in this case it was 9 to 11 slides, I would straight away say 11 slides, because what we're basically doing is we're giving you 11 slides to get marks on. And if you use 9, that you're then saying I don't need the 2 other free slides that you could use to maximize your chances of getting marks. So use the canvas that you're given, not only from a total point of view, the 11 slides, but also from an individual slide point of view. Use that canvas. And I've made it a point later on, and I'll just reiterate it, but I just want to introduce it here, is that you're not, for a presentation, unfortunately, you're not presenting to me as a marker. You're not in the room giving your presentation. So you might do presentations for your job. Unfortunately, for an exam, I can only mark what's on that slide. So you would err on the side of too much information on that slide. Then in a practical sense, you would have much less information. So I think students often worry that they have to do a lot less information on a slide because that's how you present. But that's because you're talking to the slide, and you would then add in information when you're talking to that slide, when you're presenting to the audience, that is not found on your slide. I can't mark you for stuff that I think you would have spoken to the slide about. I can only mark you what's on the slide. But there's a balance. You don't want to just dump all words and everything and graphics on a slide. Then it's too busy and you're going to be marked down from a communication point of view. You might get lots of marks from a technical point of view, but you would get marked down from a communication point. So there is a balance, but just know that you can err on the side of more information on a slide than what you would do in real life because you're not presenting it. So I hope that makes sense. But this was the question. Again, what's our goal? Our goal is to find the instructions. This one is a lot easier to find the instructions. So you'll see every question is different. The last one you saw, there were lots of instructions, and I would say that this question was the easier question of the two. Remember, I mentioned at the beginning that typically there is a question that's more tricky than the other. This one is probably the more easy one. So you don't want to spend too much time on this one because you know that the other one is going to demand quite a bit of your time. But you also don't want to spend too little time on this and spend all your time on question 1, because then you're not going to get the easy marks available here. So these were the 4 instructions as I saw them. You have to draft a presentation. I mean, that's the easy one that we all see. But you have to present the opportunity of selling cauliflower to increase profit. And I would encourage you, go find these instructions in the question, because they're there. It said present the opportunity of selling cauliflower to increase profit. You had to persuade the class that they would raise more money this way. And this element was often missed, that the presentations, you might have presented your case, but you weren't using persuasive words. You weren't trying to sort of persuade the class that this is the better way to do it. So then it starts talking about your tone, the words that you would use, even maybe some of the graphics that you would want to use to try persuade them. But certainly it would be how you position it and how you end it off in your conclusion. You could literally say in your conclusion, I hope to have persuaded you today that this is what cauliflower is the way to go, and this is the number that we should sell. And then speaking about the number, that's the 4th instruction. It really did say in the instructions how many of each type of vegetable to raise the most money. And yeah, if you tackle these 4 sections, this is what the question was asking. But what's nice about the presentation questions lately, when I say lately, I mean in the last sort of 5 or so years, and in fact this 2017 paper was probably one of the first ones to do it, that they give you the first 3 slides. Now don't bank on that. That won't always be the case, so don't rely on it, but it is very useful, because then you can see they're guiding you as to where you should be looking. But you should still find these instructions in the paper just to make sure that agenda that they give you does tie in with these that you know that you have to answer. If it doesn't, you would then change that agenda to tie in with what you want to answer. Okay, so now that we know the exam plan, we now want to look at the solution from a technical point of view. And you would have seen from the agenda slide that really that they wanted to, you had to do the current situation. What is the current situation? Explain it. Don't just assume that the audience knows exactly that they sell 10 butternuts a week, that this is the cost price, this is the sale price, this is the total profit. You had to explain all of that. You had to say, what is the game we're playing? The game is that we have only space for 10 vegetables. We currently sell butternuts only. The cost price is this much for it, and the sale price is this much, and therefore the total the individual profit is sale price minus cost price equals the profit. So our total profit is that times 10. That's the type of steps that you want to build up your argument, because what you're showing is that your profit is made up of individual items, so that when you introduce the cauliflower, which is giving you a greater profit up to a point, you then are persuading the class that actually, hang on, we can substitute some of these butternuts for some cauliflowers to show why we would maximize profit. You would then also just introduce the fact that the sale price and the cost price of the butternut is fixed. So this was a critical point in the whole paper, and it found its way in a couple of areas where they spoke about the fact that it's fixed. The sale price and the cost price were fixed for the butternut, which means you have a constant profit. But the sale price, as we saw looking at the paper here, the sale price goes down for each additional cauliflower that we want to sell, which means that if that's going down, but the cost price is fixed, it would mean that so it says the cauliflowers cost 6 Rand each to grow. So cauliflowers had a fixed cost price, but they had a variable sales price. And that means that the profit per cauliflower decreases the more you sell. And that was key, because that meant that you had variable profit for the cauliflower, whereas you had constant profit for the butternut. So I hope that's clear. But your goal was to find the optimal mix, because that's what they said. You try to find the one that maximizes the profit. So you could use a graph or a table. But again, I've sort of said use examples, please. Whenever you use a graph or a table, use examples, and I'll show you how they've done that as well. This point here was key, and I think it was missed a lot of the time by students, is that you had to extend to the end of the year to get your total increased profit. And I mean, I don't think I do have here. So and again, it tells you why they're telling you all of this stuff here at the beginning. We're saying you're in 40 weeks time, that you've got till the end of the year. But a lot of the time, students missed out the fact that your actual goal for this whole thing was to raise money so you could buy airtime. Do you know how many students, and I check your solutions as well, how many students failed to mention airtime, first of all, at all in the entire solution, if they mentioned airtime at all? Or also importantly, in their conclusion, they should mention in the conclusion, we get this much profit by the end of the year so we can buy additional airtime, because that was the goal, right? And so you would want to set that goal or that aim up front, and you would want to then close it off with your conclusion at the end. That's just shows you that each sentence is important. There's a reason why they're telling you something. Don't lose sight of the fact why am I doing it, because it's very easy to just lose sight of it and say I'm going to maximize my profit, and I'm going to find what that profit number is, and then you feel very good that you found the correct combination, but you're not actually saying what it's for. What are they doing? So you want to tie it back to this airtime goal, is what I'm saying. But this is easier to see with a spreadsheet. So I want to show you the spreadsheet, and it's because often I think we also get maybe a bit worried about what the spreadsheet maybe looks like, and we'll look at the slides as well. So I'm going to now put this up, and this was my spreadsheet. So I always, whenever I do a question, I always do it as well in terms of the calculation, because I want to understand not only how the answers are arrived at, but I also want to see what the possibilities of students, where they can go wrong, because I'll get different answers and I want to know why you're getting that, so that I can see if I can give you marks or not. Okay, so having said that, we knew that there's certain things we know, and all I said was I called it butter, but it's butternut. You know, R7 sales price, R4 cost price. Your cauliflower was different, and this is the table that you saw in your paper. It went from R12.50 down to R8 at the end, and your cost price was constant 6. And then what I did was there's different combinations that I can do, right? There's 11 combinations because I can have 0 butternut and 10 cauliflower, and I can go all the way up to 10 butternut and 0 cauliflower. And you change that in increments of 1. But as this changes in increments of 1, this must now be reducing in increments of 1, so that these two always add up to 10. I think we all understand that. But the sales price for any combination is made up of the product of your butternut number times by your butternut sales price plus your cauliflower number times by the cauliflower sales price. And the way I did that, you can do it however you wanted to do it. I just did it with an H lookup, and I'm looking at the second row. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. I just really look for the number of 10 and find the sales price. So in this case, it would have found this 8 here, and I'm multiplying it by the number 10. And so that then gives me my 80. And likewise, I did the same with the cost price, right? Instead, all I'm just using now is the cost price figures, and I'm finding the third row here, which is the cost price. What that then does is gives me the sales price and the cost price per combination. And then the profit, as we know, is the difference between the two. And then it's a simple thing of eyeballing it and seeing where is the maximum. But I did do just a max here just to make sure. I want to see what the maximum is. I highlighted it in yellow because I don't want to make a mistake that when I paste it into when I talk about it in my presentation, that I get the wrong combination. That has happened many times. Students will exam stress. They'll write, and even this, they might have wrote 7 and 6, for example, which is completely wrong. But it happens. Exam stress makes you do weird things. So just do things that will help you. But R38 is my maximum profit, and I can see that from my graph that I've done here. There's my profit figure that is maximizing at 38, and then I just did a quick bar graph that shows the combinations of butternut versus cauliflower. So this was my way of doing it so that I could convince myself where the maximum is, and it's as simple as that. And this should not take you too long. You can do it however you felt necessary. This was just the way my brain sort of looked at it. I'm hoping that sort of does, it does make a bit of sense. What I do want to show you now, I'm hoping you can see this. Yeah, this is the model solution. And I want to just go through the model solution quickly. So if we go, it's just something to mention. The first 3 slides were given to us in the exam, as I said. And what was expected from you is that this one you would actually change. The reason why you would change is that you saw that the first slide had just March 2017, but the exam told you it's the 12th of March. They specifically said you're presenting the next day or whatever it was, the 12th of March. So and I'm sorry, I've still got 2017. Yeah, I've still got the exam. I did this on the exam, but your assignment would have been 2020. But irrespective, you would put the date that was relevant to you from your exam. And you would want to change. You would have seen the agenda slide that they gave you was quite, I'm going to say all over the place, but not. There was a lot of detail in the agenda slide from the exam. And so that's not a typical agenda slide. What you'd want to do is group it into better categories or themes, but also that's more sort of an agenda slide format. So that's what they've done here. And you can, you might have had it slightly different, and that's fine. But the third slide you would have seen it was very scant on detail. There wasn't a lot of detail going on in that slide. And so now you would have to now start really the hard work in terms of filling it in. And this is where you build up your argument. You want to build up what is our current situation. The first thing, what is our aim? And always when you're presenting, ask yourself, why are we here today? And would the audience know that? Do we have to say what it is? And most of the time you do have to say. You want to create context for your audience. Just like your opening paragraph in your letter, you have an opening statement or goal or aim or background or history or why are we sitting here today listening to this presentation. So that's quite key, and you got points for this or marks for this. So that's why I'm mentioning it. And then the current situation. And this is quite nice the way they did that. Don't stress if you don't have a picture of a butternut in your, your picture gallery. It's not necessary. You can, obviously this makes the presentation look really nice, but it's not necessary for you to do this picture. You could have done something else. And PowerPoint makes it very easy these days to do design elements. I mean, there's a design element. You can choose a template very quickly that can change it quite nicely. And even in PowerPoint design, it might give you different suggestions for the slide if you have that capability. But don't worry too much about making your slides look super fancy. I'd rather the detail be right, but just know that you can put a little bit of effort in making it look more appealing from a visual point of view. But having said that, they show the individual elements of the cost price versus the profit of a butternut, so it's fixed. And here, what we wanted to see is the word fixed. And what I'm not seeing is where that is, because it should be here to say, they say for the same profit. But I would say it even more. I would say it's fixed. You put a block here and say we cannot change the profit per unit. You use, again, there's like sort of empty space here that I could use if I wanted to. Make your point. Again, I'm taking a step back and saying, so what? What did I want to do with this slide? I wanted to give the current profit situation. Have I achieved that goal? You say, yes, I've built it up. How is profit calculated? What is the profit per unit? And what is my total profit? But now you see they're doing this little thing at the bottom here, which I would have done in a box just to make it look better, but opportunity to sell some cauliflower in place of the butternut for more profit. So what they're doing is they're signposting to say, what is the next slide? It's going to now talk about the profits that you can get from selling a cauliflower. And so this is how they then build up the different elements. And I'm not going to go through it in great detail, but they talk about how the butternut is fixed versus, and I suppose this is where they talk about the fixed element versus the varied element of the cauliflower. They have a graph that shows this is per unit of the the profit that goes down, but the cost is fixed. And then they give an example. So remember I mentioned if you give a nice table or a graph, give an example, because your audience might not know what this graph is saying. So they talk about what it would mean if you swap the first butternut, how much more profit you would get from that first butternut. So that's quite important. And you could see that, it's the first butternut gives you R6.50 profit. So if you swapped your first butternut, which gives you a profit of R3 usually, for a cauliflower, which gives you profit of R6.50, you get an additional R3.50, which gives you a total R33.50. Now you're making it real for the audience. Now they're going, aha, this is why you're telling me about this. But there's a catch. We can't just maximize the number that we sell, because it decreases with each unit we sell. And that's what then this is now talking about. And again, this is one way to do it. It doesn't mean that you had to do it this way, but it is the different areas that you'd want to cover. And you'd want to, the way they did it, which is quite a nice way to do it. I probably wouldn't have done it personally. So I would have missed out on marks here. But they talk about what your profit is for swapping one butternut, which was the R33.50 we saw on the previous slide. And then they talk about the profit if you swapped all the butternuts for cauliflowers, gives you a profit of R20. So it's a nice way to show that, because as soon as you see, oh, if your butternut's giving us R3.50 for swapping one, let's swap all of them. Suddenly you're losing, because our original was R30, but now we're getting R20 only. So you have to maximize the profit in between selling only butternuts or only cauliflower. So in other words, there is some combination in between that will maximize. And that's there where you can then they put a table. You might disagree with this table. You might not. You might want us to do a graph rather. But in this case, they've done basically the table that I had in my spreadsheet as well. It's a similar, so they highlighted in yellow as well. It's the combination of 6 butternuts and 4 cauliflower that gave you the R38. But you see here, they've given an example. They're not just saying, I mean, they're telling you how it's calculated here, the butternut profit versus the cauliflower profit. But it's nice that actually they've given you a specific example so that you can see exactly how this 20 Rand is arrived at. It's 5 times the 4 Rand. You could have done that below here, as they did in this slide here, an example. But here they did it in the table. And this is quite a neat way to do a table example. So, but just the point is that you use examples so that the reader or the audience understand what the table is made up of, as well as using these sort of headings.
Jared, I just want to jump in there quickly and say that I agree with you so much about this little text box that you would have at the bottom, and that you'd actually make it stand out by giving it a border. And here too, I would have done a similar thing. But of course, there's not much space here because of this choice of this table, because you could have done it another way, which is more linear, and you might get more space. But we don't like on the communication side just to have a table. The highlight is good, but even just a comment, maybe even a text box that even went over something or was on the side, on the very side of that slide 7, which then said, yeah, there, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, as you're talking, I just want to show how
it stands out, yeah. So then, so they did have something like that, to have that, the line. So then it does stand out. Otherwise, make the font white. So yeah, and so for that slide 7, although the highlight is there, please don't have just a graphic on a slide, a heading and just a graphic. You would want to have something that Jared's just put in here at the bottom or on the side in a text box, just alerting the person, because it's like a conversation you're having with them. If you just present the slide, that's not a conversation. That's just shoving it in their face. So just remember that.
And I mean, I'm hoping you've seen that as Billy's talking, how quickly you can make things stand out. It doesn't have to be fancy. Boxes do wonders.
Yes, they do.
You don't need graphics like that. I mean, that would be fantastic if you had a butternut up your sleeve, but most students won't. And so you can use icons as well. There's also a feature for inserting icons. If you've got that, I'm not sure how what version of PowerPoint you have. So I present for my job, so I've got some nifty things here. But if you don't have that, you don't need the fancy ones. You've got boxes. Everyone's got access to these boxes. So just play around with making things look much better. I always call it the bird's eye test. So just while we're talking about this, if you go to your view and you go to your slide sorter, I want you to do this when you have your presentation. Just look at your slides and see that are they sufficiently varied from a visual point of view, or do they all look exactly like this one, for example, like really boring? Because if it's really boring, you're going to be marked down from a communication point of view. But this one, it looks quite varied, right? And you immediately look at the box up picture. It made this slide look much nicer, in my opinion. I could possibly do something here as well, but otherwise, this looks good. Personally, I would have, changed this from a template point of view. As I showed you in the beginning, you can choose something very subtle. This is fine. And it immediately changes the entire presentation just to look a little bit better. And it's seconds to do that, so you really don't have to have plain boring white slides anymore. But anyway, that's from that point of view. So we were on this table. Yeah, and so that just shows you the profits, and you can which one is the maximized profit. But then you can't just leave it at that and assume that the audience knows it's the one that I highlighted in yellow, because you want to speak about it, right? You want to say, well, the profit is maximized by growing and selling 6 butternuts and 4 cauliflower. No other combination gives you a profit bigger than the 38, right? But then a lot of students stop there, because that's just your profit per week. You want to then say the total profit change over the 40 weeks, because they were just selling butternuts. So what does this mean from a global point of view, from the end of the year? If we're selling just 10, this is what our profit would be by the end of the year. It was 30 Rand as we were tracking, just chugging along, 30 Rand a week. We've got 40 weeks left, so we'll have 1,200 Rand. But if we do this new optimal mix, we can have 1,520. and then state that you're improving your profit over 40 weeks by 320 Rand. Why are they saying that if we've really, first of all, you're drawing the contrast there, but you're doing the one instruction which was persuade the class, and it's very persuasive if you've now suddenly got, you improve your profit by 320. Again, I probably would have put this not just bold, I would have put it in a bigger block like we did on the slide, but you don't have to. It's just the point is that that's there. It's now persuaded, now the class, they would be silly not to embark on this. And your conclusion then will just tie in, just the conclusions always just tie in with what your goals were, what your instructions were. But again, this graphic is here for a reason, because it was all about airtime, and majority of students missed it because it was only mentioned right at the beginning of the presentation or the question, and not mentioned again. So it's quite key to just to state that. So if I jump back to now my presentation. Okay, so some of the common mistakes, what did we see here? One of the mistakes is not adjusting the slides given. So I mentioned that they gave you those first 3 slides, and some students just used them as is. And if you look back now, go look at it, you'll see the agenda slide was very confusing, first of all. But not only confusing, it was like whole sentences being used there, and it was just all over the place. So they wanted you to tighten up the agenda slide. They wanted you to be more specific with the date. You were given more information, so it wasn't just March 2017 or 2020, but it was the 12th, so you could write that in. Use what's given to you, and it'll be worth just 1 mark, but it's every mark counts. When you start adding them all up, suddenly they become worthwhile. The third slide, as I mentioned, was missing quite a bit of data from a technical point of view. This is more where my area is, and these would be more where Billy's playing in the communications aspect, but you need both aspects to be able to give a good attempt. And the reason could be just failing to prepare, again, just your planning and not reading the question properly. I would also say here maybe just level-headedness and just calming down and just saying, I don't like the look of this agenda slide, so I'm going to tighten it up to suit my plan that gathered by the instructions that I've found. Some other mistakes that we saw were the calculation errors. There weren't a lot. I think a majority of students found this fairly easy to find, the 38 Rand, but not always. It was misunderstood about the whole using fixed sales versus varied cost. They swapped it around, for example, or the fact that they used a fixed one for both, and it just I think sometimes maybe the situation was misunderstood. And if you misunderstand something, it's because you probably have only read the question once or twice, read it 3 times. If you still don't get it, then read it 4 times. There's no point in jumping into a question or an answer that you don't understand what they're asking, because you're wasting your time, you're wasting marks. Rather take a bit more extra time to understand what it is they're asking and then tackle it. I can only think that's, and just on the calculation unit, not giving examples to explain the profits in the table, but I can only think a lot of the time it was time constraints. So I think students spend too much time on question 1, which we typically see. If question 1 is the more difficult of the 2, often question 2 then suffers because you've spent too much time on question 1. You weren't ruthless with your time. And then you might have also just looked at question 2 and said, oh, that's easy, so I don't need as much time. But you still do. These things still take time to do. You might not have used a spreadsheet, so I don't know. I would encourage you to replicate a spreadsheet like that. Do it in your way. Find how it is that you would find out what the optimal mix is. And it ties in with your planning. And just checking. Make sure what you're saying makes sense. Did you expect the profit graph, as I showed you, it should bow out? There should be a maximal point and then it decreases. If your profit just kept going up, question that. It might be right. You might the optimal mix might be the last one, in which case your profit would still keep going up. But just question that. Am I seeing what I expect to see? And that's not just with this question. That's with every question. You're always independently try to check your calculations to make sure that they make sense. And then just some of the other mistakes we saw is just not tying in with the aim of the presentation. So the aim was the airtime, as I mentioned. sense checking in general. Just make sure that what you're saying, does it make sense? Not using information given. So I mean, these are just broad mistakes, but wrong tone for a class. So you might very well have been speaking a bit above the heads of a matric class, for example. And what I encourage you always to do is to take a step back and say, so what? Always ask yourselves, and that's where I sort of got these final tips and hints. So this is my last slide, but it's just these are not specific to these questions, but this is in general. So this is quite an important slide that I've just seen, that some of the common mistakes that I see across the board each year when we mark. But one of them that I just want to just draw your attention to is specifically this, so what. I've mentioned it before, but ask so what. When you do a slide, take a step back and say, so what was my intention here, and did I answer what I wanted to answer? Did I make the point I wanted to make? And there was a question earlier that said, like, how do I know if I've written enough? Then, take the step back and after each slide and say, so what? And after each paragraph, so it works with paragraphs as well. Reread what you wrote, what you put down on the slide, and ask, so what? Did it hit what I meant to hit? I've mentioned use the word count or the slide count as a guideline, and it's a guideline I mentioned at the beginning, but use it as a guideline in the sense that you have answered what you need to answer in sufficient detail. So if you might have gone over, which means that you might be repeating yourself. But if you're going under, then, or if it's light, if it's on the light side, then just know that there's a chance you're missing an instruction. What I'm hoping is that the word count will come together for you, because at the beginning, your plan was that you found the instructions, you know which answer, which themes, and which areas to tackle. And so your word count and your slide count comes out quite nicely because you've planned it. Please use spell check at the end. I did that for this presentation. You have to use spell check because you're going to be marked down severely. It's a communication paper, and then if you've got a whole bunch, we all make spelling mistakes. We all mistype. There's nothing wrong with that. There is something wrong if you submit your paper with spelling mistakes. I've literally had, it was quite a few years ago, but I remember marking a paper where the students had written "you" with just a "u," like you would do texting someone. And I mean, for a communications paper, that's wow. That just shows you something. It's exam stress. I can only put it down, but you're going to be severely marked down for something like that. So just know that use spell check at the end. Typically, students don't because they run out of time. So again, it ties in with your planning. If you've planned sufficiently and you kept your level head and you've answered your question, you then have the 2 minutes it takes at the end to just click that spell check button and go through where you may have misspelled something or the grammar might not be correct. Make use of examples. We've said that especially in tables and graphs, and hopefully you've seen in this question how to do that. And use the bottom of slides as wrapping up space. So you would have seen that as well, that you can wrap up. This ties in with the asking so what. If you feel that maybe you didn't make your point clear enough, or it's a very important point, as it was on it was on the solution with the additional 320 Rand profit. That's quite a key point. So that you want to really use that, wrap it up at the bottom with a bubble, or a block, whatever, however, bold writing. Use that as a way to wrap up the slide, make your point. And I said use all of the slides. You're not presenting in reality. I think I've made that point now, that you would normally present in reality and you would normally talk to your slides, and you don't have that luxury now. Maybe one day we will have the communications exam where the students can type some things in the notes section, but that comes with its own issues, I guess. But you don't have that. You've got just the slides. So make sure you use it. Make sure you convey what it is that you're saying. You don't need to use full sentences, but you need to convey your message. And then just finally sort of use the design in PowerPoint, or the zoom out at least. So as I say, you might not have design in PowerPoint. I think it comes standard now, but maybe not. But you can use templates at least, and you saw how easy it was to put in blocks and change the shading of it so that it's transparent. But zoom out at least. So that's that bird's eye view that I mentioned. That you just click on that slide sorter view and just look at your slides. Do they look like they have nice flow? Are they sufficiently different? You'd be surprised if you do that and you see how monotonous some slides look, and they all look the same. But my goal, if nothing else out of this, is to find the instructions. I hope that's what you've taken from today. I hope you've taken many things from today, but the main thing is just know that the exam has many sub questions, and your goal is to find them and answer those, because those form the basis of your question. So hopefully that helps. I don't know if there are any other questions, and just to say, yeah, good luck with this next period before your exam. You've got about a month, and it's really that's where you've put in the hard work now. Is that, and that will help you for your exam. You've got to practice these things. So it's fine to know them, but you really do have to practice. Find an exam technique or an exam planning technique that works for you, and practice it, because it won't just magically come together in the exam because you've thought about it. You have to practice it. Use past papers to test the technique that you want to be able to identify the instructions and answer it and get your format or the structure of your communication piece together. So that's all from me. I don't know if there are any questions, or if Billy, if you want to add anything.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Jared. You really do combine the technical and the communication aspects so beautifully. I'm going to suggest that if there are any questions, that the team, the participants, the students can just send those questions along to me, unless there's something right now which you would like to ask, which you feel everybody would benefit from, which is also fine. And that to remind you that the lesson on the learning management system, the Academy learning management system, the lesson on presentations does go into a lot of detail, and we also do have a few videos on that as well. So I've just made a comment about the slide sorter, that the marker can also see that slide sorter, and they'll be able to see the range of your slides at a glance, the coherence, and also the layout and everything. So although every slide must be a unit in itself, they all work together. So just to reiterate what Jared said, are there any questions from the chat? And really thank you so much, Jared, for staying on.
Absolute pleasure.
And okay, so I'm not seeing any questions there. So to everybody today, for being here, for actually just taking the time to be here, and also most particularly for Jared for going into such incredible detail. It is absolutely wonderful to have that for us, to link to our learning. And I'm sure you'll all agree with me that it was very not only informative but instructive as well. So thank you again, Jared, for that. And thank you all for being here. So we'll close the meeting now, and yeah, and next week you're doing your mock exam, right? It's the 24th. So I'm glad to get all your thank you, Mhleli, as well for that. Okay, so next week we're going to do this actual test of whether you can manage your time, plan, etc., and do both questions in that mock exam. All right. So, and we're having it early so that for the week after we have a technical, and then the week after that there's feedback on that mock exam. And you would not have seen that mock exam. No, the two questions, they are not in anywhere else. So it's going to be a real test for you. So that's great. So thank you again, everybody. I will make the recording available, yeah, we look forward to you utilizing everything that you've learned today.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks, Jared.
Cheers all.
Thank you.
Thanks.